Okay, so next we're continuing with the psychodynamic view, and I guess they mentioned a few things. Yeah, that I didn't mention along with those psychosexual stages of development, personality development. Um, they do mention a number of processes in there that like identification, process of identification, where obviously children will sort of, absorb into themselves the values of their parents, right? So where does our super ego come from, right? That controls the id or tries to suppress it anyway. Where does that come? Well, obviously it's influenced by our parents and our larger society too. So we identify with our parents. We kind of absorb their values into our super ego. And then in those different psychosexual stages of development, you can become fixated in one of those stages, according to Freud. So you don't work through the stage correctly, and so you get fixated in that stage, get stuck in that stage, and that can influence your behavior later in life, right? And we'll just leave it at that. All right. Then we talk about these ego defense mechanisms, right? So our ego, our sense of self, we might, if some of these unconscious things becoming conscious, or anything starts causing anxiety, an attack on our sense of self, our ego, then these are unconscious defense mechanisms that will try to take care of that stuff so we don't have to be consciously aware of these terrible things, right? That might challenge our sense of who we are and cause us anxiety. All right. So they do mention a number of these. Kind of, they mention first of all, of course, the phenomenon of repression, where you repress something into the unconscious mind. Of course, the superego is doing that. It's pushing something, repressing it down into the unconscious mind so that you have no memory of it ever having taken place, although it did, right? Now, it's still down in there in the unconscious mind, and it may come out someday, though, right? But right now it's repressed. So repression is involved in a lot of these defense mechanisms, right? So repression, just repress it in the unconscious so you just completely forget about it, right? But then they talk about a number of other ones here, and you have an assignment, upcoming assignment that you identify these different types of defense mechanisms in the examples on that sheet. So you have a regression. Right now, we just mentioned repression. This is regression. Regression is another one of these. And this is where an individual basically retreats to an earlier stage of development, so they don't have to deal with the anxiety that they would have to deal with if they fully accepted what's going on right now. So regression. There are many different kinds of examples here. Maybe a younger sibling has already been potty trained. He's gone through the phase. He doesn't pee in his bed anymore at night. But maybe mom and dad bring home, and they have a new child. They bring that new infant home. All of a sudden, the little boy starts wetting his bed again at night, right? Freud and these psychodynamic people would argue the child is engaging in regression. The child is anxious and not getting the attention that he is used to, so he's regressing to an earlier stage of development to get more attention. That draws more attention from the parents again, right? Or that might be an adult human being who has a temper tantrum to get their way. Why isn't an adult having a temper tantrum to get their way? You're regressing, if I can say it, right, to an earlier stage of development. This is something a kid might do to get its way, right? Then they got reaction formation, right? Reaction formation. Basically, if you have some unacceptable impulses or desires, what you do is you go all the way to the opposite extreme of those impulses to show that you don't really have those impulses, right? Reaction formation. Here, once again, these, You can pull these out of the hat anytime a psychodynamic wants to claim something like this. But once again, there's no proof for any of these. Well, there's some, but you know. So a stereotypical example of reaction formation would be, where a Freudian, wonders why this guy is a homophobic a-hole, right? So he's really homophobic. I mean, he hates them. He goes out, he beats them up. Why is he such a homophobe? Maybe it's because he really has these homosexual feelings himself, right? But it caused too much anxiety to his ego to accept that he has those impulses. So the unconscious mind works its magic, and he goes all the way to the opposite extreme, becomes a homophobe, right? And attacks these people. But it's because he really has feelings like that, right? That would be reaction formation, an example. And you got projection, right? Projection is just where you have these impulses, but you project them onto somebody else. You accuse somebody else of having these impulses, right? So maybe someone is just, honestly, just a major jerk, just argumentative and a hell of a jerk. But he accuses everybody else of being jerks, right? I mean, he's not a jerk; they're a jerk, right? So yeah, you're just projecting what you are like and saying other people are like that, and not having to deal with the thought that I'm that way and the anxiety that would come from that, right? So that's projection. Then you got rationalization. Rationalization, you just come up with some other reason why you did what you did, right? You're rationalizing it away. So you come up with some reason, some justifying reason why you did that. That's other than the real reason, right? So that's rationalization, right? So maybe you cheat on a test, and it would cause you too much anxiety to accept the fact that you're a cheat. So what you do is you rationalize it, right? You rationalize that, well, I'm not cheating. The reason I'm doing that is because this class is so hard, that professor's so hard, and he's just unfair, and that's why I'm doing this. So you don't have to deal with the fact that you're cheating, right? Or if you're a thief, if you steal stuff. I mean, well, I'm not a terrible person. I'm not a criminal. I'm doing this because society is unfair and it's stacked against me. So you're rationalizing. You come up with all these reasons why you're doing what you're doing, other than the fact that you're a criminal, right? Because realizing that you're a criminal would cause too much anxiety to your ego, right? So that's rationalization. Displacement is where you have these impulses towards somebody or something. You'd like to do it, but you can't. It's unacceptable to do it for whatever reason. So what you do is you displace those impulses and apply them towards some other object that is acceptable for you to do that, right? So old stereotype in displacement would be like, well, the husband's at work, the boss yells at the husband. Well, the husband would really like to yell back at the boss and hit him. He can't. So what does he do with all this pent-up anger? He displaces it onto his wife when he gets home. He yells at his wife. Then his wife displaces it, onto the kid. The kid displaces it onto the dog by kicking the dog. The dog chases the cat. Everybody's displacing their anger, right? So it's just for some reason you can't put this impulse on the person you would like, so you displace it onto a more acceptable target, right? And then just denial, right? So they mentioned denial too. You just refuse to believe or even consider the possibility that is true, right? So you're in denial. You're floating down denial. Ha ha ha. Denial in Egypt? Denial? Ha ha ha. I know that's terrible. But denial is a nice place to float in. You don't have to accept all these terrible things, right? So, maybe if someone's convicted of murder, DNA proves it, and maybe the mother of this murder just won't accept it. They're just in denial. That couldn't. No, he wouldn't do that. She wouldn't do that. That's not possible, right? Just deny it, deny it, deny it, right? So you don't have to deal with all the terrible emotions that would come from accepting it, right? So those are some of those defense mechanisms for that assignment you'll do on that, on those. All right?